Welcome to the Top 10 Gardener with Master Gardener Ken Lain. Gardening can be challenging, but with Ken's tips, tricks, and top 10 advice, you'll reap huge rewards. Now welcome your garden host, Ken Lain.
And welcome to this week's edition of The Mountain Gardener. Your host, Ken Lain, here every week, talking about the landscapes of northern Arizona. And spring is this month. Isn't that exciting? It feels like things are starting to happen. I'm seeing daffodils about to erupt with colors. My winter blooming jasmines have been in bloom for a while. Daffodils are up. The peach trees, no, the cherry trees are starting to bloom this week all around town. So those are all indications, or early indications of what is spring? When is it about to happen? Well, it's now. Actually, if you were thinking about doing some gardening this next spring season, that'd be vegetables, like all your summer blooming, fruiting things. We're talking tomatoes and peppers and cucumbers and eggplants and all squash, all those things. You really should start those plants. If you're going to start them by seed, you should start those well in advance of the spring planting season, which is typically the end of April, first part of May. That's kind of our window for starting, at least at this elevation. You folks tuned in from, let's say it's Sedona, Camp Verde, Mayer, Kingman, Hillside, the Kirklands, the lower elevation down. You might be starting even mid April, maybe beginning. It depends on the season somewhat. And so you should be thinking about starting your plants, seedlings, by now. Like you need to be 6 to 8 weeks before the planting season. Well, let's back the math up. You got 2 months from now, that'd be May 1st. You're going to be putting full on plants out in the yard. You really don't want to start seed directly in the soil, not here at this elevation. And the reason is it's so cool at night. The soil it takes a while for it to warm up. It's all about temperature. When that soil is up around 45, 50, 55 degrees, that's what ignites seed to start germinating. They kind of hold in stasis until the soil finally gets warm enough. Well, that might be for you folks on the ridge lines. It might not be until May before you have soil that's that warm. So it's better to start by plants, by starter plants, than it is to start by seed directly in the soil. So usually we're starting with a good tray, some containers, maybe some eggshells, some peat pots. We're getting our seed. We're starting those a couple months before we're planning on planting those in the yard so that we can have fully established plants directly into the gardens. So we're at least a couple months ahead of the growing season. Otherwise, it'll be the end of this. It'll be September before you're even thinking about having tomatoes or eggplants or some of these bigger, more heat-loving plants. To jumpstart that, you start with plant starts. So actually fully established, fully rooted plants out there in the yard. And the way to do that is get your seed now, plant it out now, start them in a windowsill or underneath a special grow light. You just kind of start things. And so if you don't like doing that, or you don't have space, or you're about to take that cruise through the Panama Canal and I just don't have time, I want to be gone for 3 weeks. Don't worry. My name's Ken. We're just friends. We're talking over the airwaves, over the back fence of the garden and I got your back. And so we are starting our plants now going into the gardens. And we've got a whole host of gardens plants we're going to introduce here. In fact, you can put your name on some of those. We're letting you purchase those now so when they get delivered the first part of April, you just got them. There's a couple that I really like. They're kind of my favorites. So at the Lain Casa, we are Pico de Gallo nuts. I mean, my country away from my country is Mexico. I just love going down and we'll watch the beach, wade in the warm blue waters and just eat Pico de Gallo pretty much the entire time. It's crazy. So it's good on chips. It's good on with guacamole. It's good everywhere. So fresh tomatoes, fresh peppers, fresh cilantro, fresh onions. Oh, fresh. My mouth's watering. Must be hungry thinking about it. So just freshness. It's salsa, but it's fresh salsa, Pico de Gallo. It's a truly Arizona thing. And so my favorites for my favorite tomato is got to be, it's called a early girly glow tomato. It's a medium size, like tennis ball size tomato. But the reason I like the girly glow, like girly, Gurley, like Girly Street, girly glow, because it's so early. It produces better, faster, sooner than any other. So you'll be having tomatoes the end of July, August, September, October. I mean, it's just, whereas some of these other bigger ones like beefsteak, brandywine, these great big heirloom tomatoes, shoot, it could be October before they start producing, depending on the nights and the temperature. For sure, you only want to start those by full-on established big plant. Well, I do that with full-on established big early producing tomatoes. Early girly is a better producing, and it is the best tomato for salsas, any kind of sautés. I mean, they're good in salads, but they get just enough zest. They're not so sweet that they kind of lose their flavor when you're adding some peppers and things, but you just have this great, rich, deep flavor. And then I really do like, it's a variety of jalapeno Zing. There's two actually that are jalapeno variations. There's a Serrano Spice Shot, so Serrano Spice Shot or Jalapeno Zing. Those two are like the perfect Pico de Gallo, fresh in the kitchen. I mean, they've got some heat, but they're not so crazy that your face melts off like habanero. Oh my gosh, what do you do with those things? They've got so much heat, you can't feel your face, much less have flavor. It's too much. I like a sweeter, bigger, thicker walled. You could stuff them and grill them on the grill. You can just fresh in salsas. And so this week, if you're part of my garden club, so Waters Garden Center, been around 63 years this month. So we have a weekly garden column. And part of that garden column is I share my favorite varieties grown here locally for the mountains of Arizona. I also took the time to put down my Pico de Gallo recipe. And that recipe is going to be right. There's a link to it. Put it on my landing page. My kids keep asking me for that because we have it at every family gathering. I said, I got to write this down. Hey, I wrote it down. Why not share it with everyone? And so that's kind of what happened. So if you want that, and it's all about the sequence, it's about the parts. So I just gave you, have your tomato. Girly glow is the best. Having the right jalapeno or Serrano, so Serrano Zing or Serrano Spice Shot or Jalapeno Zing. Those two, they've got heat, but they're sweet. They're big, but they've got thick walls. They're meaty, fleshy. The cilantro Sunrise. It doesn't bolt as fast as some of the other varieties of herbs, and so sometimes they'll take on more of our cool nights, bright days. It does better. And a sweet onion. So I put that list together. And the sequence, and then how much vinegar and how much salt and how much lime and when do you put what? And I always start with the spicy things first, the peppers and the onions. I put some salt and I put some vinegar on top, let them simmer while I'm chopping up my tomatoes. And then I lastly put on the cilantro. And the cilantro, I put the entire stem. The more stems, the better. Stem is where all the rich flavor is, but you got to chop it up real fine. So I always start with everyone just wants the foliage of cilantro. No, you really bring out the flavor when you put the stems in too. So I'm chopping that up real fine. Then I get this in, I blend it all together, and it will melt in your mouth. People are just the kids, they'll just eat it like soup. I don't know, just the fresh Pico de Gallo. It's so delicious. It fills the entire house up with this fresh garden. Just it smells of sunrise, of just garden earthy beauty, just of health. That's great Pico de Gallo. Going back to not my recipe, it's just basically going back to, you need to start. If you're going to start your own by seed, start now. If you don't, I'll have those varieties available for you. later. So we're starting them right now.
Growing up in Prescott, we knew spring was here when my grandmother's lilacs bloomed. I'm Lisa Waters Lane, and my grandmother would be thrilled with the new Bloomerang purple lilacs at Waters Garden Center. They don't just bloom once in spring, they bloom again in summer. Mine bloomed 3 times last year, making spring last well into fall, and just $29.99. Come check out all the heavenly new sights and scents that are making this spring the most beautiful ever. Lilacs like Grandma used to grow and better. Waters Garden Center in Prescott.
If you want a more fruitful garden, increased success in landscape that just feels better, then tune in daily to the Top 10 Garden Podcast. Years of tips, tricks, and garden shortcuts are guaranteed to make your gardens nicer than ever. Listen to this podcast or read Ken's weekly garden column by visiting watersgardencenter.com. That's Waters with 2 T's, gardencenter.com. Thanks for tuning in.